Welcome to another episode of Coffee with Samso, where we chat with ASX mining companies, exploration companies, CEOs, or identities in the industry, and share what their journey is, what the story is about. Today I've got Christian Easterday back from Hot Chile. They've just made a big announcement on a resource for Cortadera. All major shareholders, or all shareholders, have been sort of awaiting this announcement. And Christian, far away, tell us all about it.
Yeah, thanks, Noel. Like you say, just back from diggers and dealers, so a little dusty from the road. But as you pointed out, this has been a huge occasion for Hot Chile, and something we've been working towards for a really long time. So on Monday we were able to release our maiden resource for the Cortadera porphyry discovery that's been really capturing a lot of limelight with the world-class drill results that have been produced so far, and we're really pleased to put out a maiden resource of some 450 million tonnes for Cortadera, and I guess the larger meaning of that resource announcement is really an absolute catapulting of growth for Hot Chile. You know, we've moved now to a combined project. These deposits all sit very close to each other, of some 750 million tonnes, and that has really put us into a really unique position. We're now the largest copper resource base on the ASX outside of a major mining company, a BHP or so, and we're one of the largest gold resources on the ASX outside of a major. So it's put us into a spot that not many people play in the ASX, and really we haven't seen anybody in the copper development space from the ASX at that end of the spectrum probably since Equinox transitioned to a producer and was acquired by Barrick. So very exciting times, and really happy to be able to give you the first interview on this, and no doubt we can go through some of the really key aspects of what this means for the company going forward.
In terms of the tonnage, just break that down, because when I look at it and you got 450 million tonnes at this grade. Then the first thing I look at, obviously on your JORC tables, is what's the metal content.
Sure.
And then the layperson goes, okay, this multiplied by that gives me this figure.
Yeah, and look, the numbers are mind-boggling. We're playing in the big copper space, not something that the ASX really is familiar with. 724 million tonnes at 0.5% roughly copper equivalent. You can probably do the maths on what $66,000 or $7,000 a tonne represents there. But this is 2.9 million tonnes of copper metal with 2.7 million ounces of gold. So that's a fairly large metal bank deposit. To have the silver on top and the molybdenum are all great values that come out in the concentrate from these projects. But the copper and the gold alone, the in-ground values of these things are huge. Certainly you've probably just seen one of the largest anti-inflationary assets be put into a junior company in a long time.
Because the numbers, as you say, are big numbers, and then you sort of do, even if you do small calculation, conservative calculation, it still become a big number. And sometimes a lot of people find that a bit hard to contemplate. And you're a small company, your market cap's less than 100 mil, and you've got these numbers. And I know in your announcement you did mention comparing to Winu, and that's sort of where everyone looks at Winu as, wow, that's really big.
Sure, but, it's one of the biggest copper discoveries in Australia for many years. So we made a couple of really key points, and one you touched on. So for context, the copper sector globally is going through a drought in discoveries. So we put into our corporate presentation a map which shows the number of global large-scale discoveries being recorded in the world by S&P Global, I believe. And not a lot of people in the ASX really get what's going on. We're going through a drought since really 2014. The world has seen no major copper discoveries outside of two discoveries: Winu by Rio Tinto, which was their first resource was announced at the end of July this year, and now Cortadera with its first resource just being released. So we're one of just two discoveries to fill this impending sort of shortage of copper going into the medium term, and so to be coming in with a resource almost identical on metal, to do that with only 40,000 metres of drilling into this deposit, the amount of metal add for the amount of spend, is really representative of the space that we're in, which is big porphyry copper discoveries. Mm-hmm. So we've transferred that into a starter resource well before we probably should have, and now we're looking to take Cortadera further and really try to classify that as probably one of the very few tier 1 discoveries that's occurred in the world in many years. So Winu was an important comparative for us, because the Australian market well understood what Rio Tinto's huge effort in the Patterson has brought to bear. So to be sitting there and putting Winu on a graph, and for it to be sitting to the far right of Costa Fuego, is representative of the size space that we're in. Mm. But one of the other things that we really noted, we spent a lot of money on benchmarking this space, and as I said to you, the ASX players, we broke it up from whether the copper resources held outside of a major mining company were either TSX or ASX or other, and you can quite clearly see when you look at the top 20 projects in the world, the ASX doesn't really control any of these deposits in the pipeline. So Costa Fuego has now moved up into some very, very esteemed space, deposits which are just sitting underneath the tier 1 definition on threshold. And in fact, one of those projects, a great project, La Verde in Mexico, held by Ross Beattie's groups with Solaris, which is a $380 million company over in Canada. So we're now sort of sitting in that space where we don't have a lot of ASX peers for anyone to compare to on value, mm-hmm. and to be sitting with a sub $100 million company holding an asset that sits up amongst much larger market capitalised companies in the TSX, it really speaks volumes for what we're about to do, and really looking to take over from where Equinox left off and give the Australians a large-scale copper champion.
I guess from most shareholders, and everyone was sort of anticipating this, and this was like the holy grail, and Christian's going to deliver, and everyone's anticipating share price movement, and we've discussed this before, and obviously it's been a bit of a damper. From my point of view, it's just the information hasn't been of what you guys have. And one of the things I did pick up, and I was thinking to myself, was that over the years we have porphyries, copper, gold, that phrase, copper, gold deposit, whatever. But gold hasn't really been a big part of it, although, the value has. But now everyone's thinking, gold's going to go to this number and that number and everything else, and copper's just floating just up where, maybe $3 a pound or something like that. But do you think that the value of this asset and all other assets that's got gold in it, it's going to have that next step up because the gold's going to take off on its own in parts?
Look, you come from a conference like Diggers and Dealers, and a few weird things happened there, not least of all because it was a global conference going on in a pandemic. We're very lucky to have sit in this bubble in Western Australia where we don't have any COVID cases in the state, and so but being at Diggers and Dealers is one of the few copper companies with some of our colleagues actually sitting over at our booth from the Soul Gold guys sitting in a very similar space. We're at a gold conference. That was very clear from the awards that were won last night to the companies presenting and to the general buzz. And Kalgoorlie is a gold and nickel town, and as it should be. But and not surprisingly, the 2.7 million ounces of gold that Hot Chili now has, which I said to you, I think rates as the 7th or 8th largest gold resource on the ASX, outside of, you know, the Billy Beaumont Raleigh tie-ups. You know, that probably got quite a lot of attention. But it's really important when you put it into context of, you know, you have a rising copper and gold price at the moment. You know, copper is now pushing 310, moving to a space that, you know, back in 2013 had Hot Chili at a $250 million market cap, off of Productora, which was a discovery and was half built, to now sitting in a very, very different space where we're talking about assembling, you know, a tier 1 copper asset. You know, and with tier 1 copper comes certainly tier 1 gold. You multiply the amount of gold out in these systems, and you only have to look at Sol Gold and where Cascabel has grown to. You look at their sort of 10, 11 million tonnes of copper, you know, they've got 23, 24 million ounces of gold sitting with it. So it's not, you know, it's easy to understand why the gold majors are also looking in this space. It's very hard to get your hands on tier 1 gold discoveries, and you come back and you mentioned Hemi and the De Grey guys doing an absolutely amazing job with the re-rate of that company, and that discovery is just, you know, just growing from strength to strength. But once again, it's a gold deposit that looks like it might break into the 5-10 million ounce range, and they're very rare.
I think the I mean that point, I think a lot of people is missing, is that there's a shift in valuation in terms of the commodity, the metal that you have, and porphyry's just going forever. And that's the another point that people forget, is that it's not a closed resource; it's actually going to be a growing resource. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah, I think so. You know, some of the images in our presentation, you know, almost the most naked images that a CEO would show of his potential. They're very in your face. You can see the system, you can see the key data sets, and this is porphyry geology. It's a very well understood targeting model that is utilised by companies such as ourselves, and you know, we're very lucky to have a preeminent guy in Steve Garwin leading our team. But you know, we're not just a company that's gone and delivered on what we said we thought Cortadera's first step could be. It's about where this goes, and that's the really exciting aspect of our growth story. You know, for us to be sitting with 750 million tonnes as our platform to start growing from, we only just started drilling this thing a year ago. So we're drilling, you know, some potential at Cortadera North that looks very look-alike, and almost too obvious a target, but to have never been drilled before. When you get exposure to a stock that is drilling really large-scale conceptual things at the same time as having a world-class discovery that still doesn't have closeout drilling, and we still don't know whether the porphyries want to join at depth. We only just discovered the high grade in the main porphyry in August last year. We haven't drill tested the other porphyries at depth. So to be having holes going underneath Quepo 2 at the moment, you know, you start seeing high grade cores opening up on the initial discovery. You know, the complexion of what we hold really changes quickly. So, you know, it's a very, very exciting space for where Hot Chili is at the moment. And I think our strategy is very clear. We have 750 million tonnes, 3.5 million tonnes of copper equivalent, or 3 million tonnes of copper. We're very, very focused on getting that inventory, that resource base, to a tier 1 status at 5 million tonnes contained copper, and we sit in a very, very slim field of available high quality projects. So, you know, one of the other things that we also mentioned is, you know, what we're doing is not complicated at all. We are very, very lucky to be on the coastline, and the coastline of Chile. If there's anywhere in the world you want to build a large-scale conventional copper-gold deposit, you wouldn't look past Chile. It's where 30% of the world's copper comes from, and you have the largest amalgamation of major mining companies invested in that space. But to have this type of deposit on the coastline next to a port with the Pan-American Highway running through it is something that hasn't been seen in Chile in a very, very long time. So we sit in a very fortunate position development-wise. We only have to look to what Teck and Newmont are doing 100 kilometres away from us. Now, unfortunately, their tie-up of the El Morro and Relincho projects, or La Fortuna, that Nueva Union project, those two deposits are separated by 42 kilometres at 4,000 metres altitude, and they have a conveyor belt development through 3 large mountains to put that together. A very similar grade, very similar metal profile. So to do that down on the coast with Productora and Cortadera 14 kilometres apart, very simple how we're going to move the dirt. We have a very unique story, but it is actually a very conventional large-scale play on the coastline of Chile that there's certainly multiple precedent around the world for.
Yeah, I think the fact that you're on that flat as opposed to in the Andes in the altitude and things like that, that's quite critical. In terms of going forward in the news flow, I know you touched on Cortadera North and things like that. What's that 12-month, 2 years view in your plan A?
Yeah, look, I think that some companies would probably look to consolidate and go down heavy on the development path and look to divert some of their expenditure. We think that Cortadera is an unbelievable opportunity, and it's going to grow, and it will keep growing. We just need to put a lot more drilling into it and be very clever about how we're targeting, which obviously has been very effective for the last year. So we see a lot of upside in the discovery. We see a lot of near discovery opportunity. We have our high-grade satellites, which we haven't really talked about in this, but there is some icing on the cake that will start to be added. So the next 12 months is all about resources and growth on the overall metal that we're putting together here, and more importantly, starting to put this blueprint of how we're going to bring all of this into one large development play. So scoping studies going underway, and no doubt along that path, I'm sure that the funding and the partnerships that we may or may not be contemplating will all be resolved in due course. But I think it's going to be a heavy drilling period and heavy resource announcements and more clarity on metallurgy and just how this all looks. What type of project are we building? There's been some recent research coming out from Veritas and from Argonaut, with a lot of people probably guessing how this looks. But you are starting to see the emergence of something that will be around the 100,000 tonnes of copper, 100,000 ounces of gold per annum, 20 to 30 year mine life, multiple large-scale open pits, and no doubt transitioning towards a large underground high-grade development opportunity. And you put that together in terms of what does all that mean? Like, how does that compare to a gold project or a nickel project in Western Australia? Because we understand that, and we understand the sparkler investments that are short cash, high value generation projects, but they burn out in 5, 6, 7, 10 years. That's all fine. We're trying to develop something that throws out $1 billion EBITDAs per annum for 20 to 30 years. So that's the space that we're in, and so this is certainly not a 50-yard sprint. But I think that most people can see that we've been in this marathon for a while, and we didn't stop back at the 10-kilometre mark, and we're sitting there really strong, up with the leaders now. Unfortunately, it looks like the leaders are all sitting over on the other side of the world, where most of the large investors in space are. But I think that the Australian crowd can be very proud to have hot Chile that is grounded out and found itself in this growth position at this point in time with where the commodity prices are.
Recently, most people who follow me have, I've been sort of telling people that they should be starting to look at companies that's got a bit of fundamentals, because I think there's a lot of speculative. I mean, it's good, everyone's making money, but I think, when you start feeling a bit nervous and you need to have some sort of assurance, I like the fact that you guys have the resource, you have, the likes of Steve Gowan, just met John Beeson's, it's these kind of guys who make a difference in terms of where you should be vectoring your drill holes or vectoring where your strategies are. I think that's a key point for me when I see Hot Chili. Leading on, in terms of the potential scenario, I mean, I know you've touched on a lot. So where in that crystal ball, where is this going? Without you getting your hand smacked by the ASX, what do you see in your crystal ball?
Look, I'll talk immediately. We've got a lot of things going on, and we're also in a period of expansion and expanding our capability with our team. We just brought on one of Perth's sort of preeminent guys with one of the big firms. Brought him on as COO, and he's been working around the company for a while. And so we're adding quite a lot of strength on the development side, on the resource development side, and really sort of expanding our capability. And that's all about preparing for what's about to occur. And on the operational side immediately, look, we are experiencing challenges like everybody in the world. We're not sitting in WA with no COVID cases. We're in Chile and we're outside of the West Australian bubble. And that means that the pandemic is very much real outside of Western Australia. And so it does affect how our operations are. So we've been just trying to speed up our drilling. Unfortunately, we've got a number of things that are stopping us at this point, but we're very keen to accelerate our rigs as soon as we can. We've got 2 drill rigs drilling, and that's saying something for where we are in Chile and Vietnam. But I think importantly, probably the news flow that's coming immediately is all around drilling updates. We've got a very, very exciting hole going underneath Cuerpo 2 at the moment. We just got our first RC hole, deep RC hole completed, and we're about to start pushing forward towards the 10 holes that we've got planned up at Cortadera North. We're going to be seeing an expansion of that program. We've got some 16 drill holes planned for the discovery zone right now. For the past 6 or 8 weeks, the company's been pretty quiet while we've been getting the resource to a really good point that we could announce that. But we've been quiet because we've been doing a hell of a lot of preparatory work with deep RC pre-collars. So there's been a big investment there, and that's going to give us the flexibility to move around the system and guide ourselves on growth. But all of those things are quite game-changing for the initial resource. So right now it's about probably some drilling updates coming to the market. And let's not forget that another aspect of the Hot Chili story is that we also have lease miners and the government over at Productora trying to also ramp up their mining effort on the high grade, so that we'll see hopefully our first commercial cash flow beginning by late November. So we've got a number of things that are going to come out to the market in just terms of updates on the operations. But then in the background, there's also the things that as you say, I can't talk about, but
you can talk about anything.
We're quite busy. We're quite busy answering phone calls and interacting with other groups that rightfully so want to know quite a lot about the asset and where the resource is and what metallurgy is coming and what's the plan of attack. So we've got a lot of stakeholder engagement going on at the moment, and I'm sure that will take its time and bear fruit when things are ready. But no, it's very much about drilling and operations and cash flow and things like that at the moment that I can speak about. But unfortunately, there's a number of things I can't speak about One thing I did update, 16 or 18 brokers with yesterday from the East Coast is something that should be obvious to everybody. And this is about how Hot Chili has even been able to put all of this together. We've done it through consolidation, and we started with an effort to consolidate Productora and eventually be able to make a discovery and define a large resource there, and then bringing in the high-grade satellites and Cortadera now. So we are about to establish one of the largest and one of the only copper concentrate facilities in this part of Chile on the coastline. And when you are holding all of the assets in an area and you're in that position, it generally means that everything else that Hot Chili's been looking at for over 10 years, and every deposit we know and who owns them, all of those deposits can be unlocked in a region when you have that type of situation occur. And so to only be looking at the assets sitting within 10, 14 kilometres of Cortadera and thinking that there are no further opportunities which might have the potential to dramatically expand what we're building here. Sometimes you've got to have a bit of an imagination as to what really could be even the bigger prize from this initial sort of beginning concept as what's coming together and what Cortadera has allowed.
Yeah, I think a lot of people forget that it's 10 years worth of overnight success that's slowly looking to fruit, but it may not fruit immediately, but that's what you've just described, what could happen. Going back into from a corporate structure, company structure, capital structure, I should use a better word. Your shareholders, are they mainly retailers, high net worths, institutions?
Yeah, look, we have noticed, as most companies have noticed, the stock market in Australia is being driven by retail, has been driven by retail for quite a number of years, really, and certainly at the moment, it's one of the only places really to be in the commodities investment area. So, we've seen a growth in the amount of retail investors in the stock, and with that, much higher liquidity in the stock. The top 5 shareholders used to control some 56% of the company. I think now account for some 26% or 27% of the company. So, we have seen a large move towards, a looser register. And so therefore, what drives the short-term retail money, we also see that in volatility. But what we do have is quite a number of very key investors that have joined the registry in recent placements and also on market. And it's great to see some of the very high net names coming into Hot Chili in the background, and also some of the Australian institutions taking an interest. We already, that we have some North American institutions in us, and what's been really surprising, and probably not now that you see that Hot Chili is one of the only ASX players playing up the big end of the copper spectrum, but we've been receiving a huge amount of interest from North America through our new website, and so it's important to know where the interest is. It's largely retail at this point, but it's seeing a growing institutional influence.
Going forward, do you have a view, or what is your view of the copper market? I know Dr. Copper's all over the shop at the moment, but what is your view going forward?
Well, I'm a CEO of a copper company, so of course it's going up.
Yeah, well, we all know it's going to go up. Yeah.
No, look, to talk about a commodity that you're in as a CEO is what's the famous saying? Asking a barber if you need a haircut.
Yeah.
So look, I really am of the view that consensus, communicates, and consensus shows a very strong long-term and medium-term position for the copper market. It's driven by supply issues. We've touched on that already. If Winu and Cortadera are the only 2 copper deposits, large copper deposits have been discovered globally since 16 and really since 14, then the world's got a problem.
Yeah.
You know, a 22 million tonne per annum copper consumption market with 2 deposits that have just delivered, what, 4 million, a bit over 4 million tonnes of copper into the market, into the development pipeline. I think that's your critical structural issue. Yeah. And so while that is the case, the fundamentals are certainly going to be very strong. I'm not too concerned in the day-to-day movements of copper, what's going on with the Chinese, what's going to happen with the election. These things will all play out, but you know, there are very good presentations going on about where the world is at the moment. And funnily enough, if you look back through the last 100 years, there have been 4 occasions or 3 occasions like this previous, and all of them are those occasions where you've seen a GFC or you've seen a pandemic or you've seen the Great Depression. All of these precursor events, they are the events that occur before major mining commodity booms and pre-reinflationary periods where there is a flight of money from low asset industries. Right now you could probably call it the FANG group, where they don't really have any assets. And when you move to a reinflationary period, guess what? You know, hard assets get a natural leverage and are the place where most of the flow of money globally shifts to. And commodities have always got a huge bump off of that when we've seen it occur previously, and I'm sure that there's a lot of people that would agree with me that as illogical as what I'm saying sounds, this has happened before, and there's a lot of people in the resource space that are excited about the next 2 years, 3 years.
All right. Look, you know, Christian, we've covered a lot of stuff, and if viewers, you know, feel free to put some questions on the comments, and I'm pretty sure Christian will happily answer them. But, you know, in closing, you know, in a couple of paragraphs, Christian, why buy Hot Chili?
Well, we're under $100 million market cap, and we're sitting with the largest copper resource on the ASX outside of a BHP. So I think that everybody can appreciate what hard asset we have, and I think that probably for all of those investors that think that this story has run to a great milestone, I think that everyone can look forward to an even bigger milestone next year.
Well, you know, Christian, I think you guys got a fantastic story. You know, what you have on the ground is, I think, still young in terms of where it could go. You know,
10 years young on the market.
Yeah, 10 years young. But Christian, thank you for time and a great update. And I think, you know, I'm hoping people that will give, you know, people a good idea of where you guys are at, and let's look forward to the next conversation.
Yeah, thank you very much, Noel.
Thanks, Christian.